Jake Martinez sat in the back row of the classroom and tried not to move too much. Every time he shifted in his chair, the other students would look at him with wide eyes. Some would even move their desks a little farther away. He had been at Zenith Galactic Academy for 3 weeks now, and things were not getting better. The classroom was huge and filled with students from all over the galaxy. There were tall blue creatures with 4 arms called Zephyrians. They made soft singing sounds when they talked. Near the front sat some living rock people called silicates. Their bodies glowed with soft light from inside. Jake had tried to learn all their names, but there were so many different types of aliens that his head hurt, just thinking about it. Professor Cathera stood at the front of the class. She looked like a giant praying mantis but walked on 2 legs. Her green skin shined under the bright lights, and her big black eyes could look in 2 directions at once. She was teaching them about how animals hunt and get hunted on different worlds. Today we will discuss predator and prey relationships, Professor Cathera said in her clicking voice. Each world creates different types of hunters and different types of food animals. Veltar, please tell us about your home world. A Zephyrian student named Veltar stood up. His blue skin got a little brighter as he talked. My world of harmony has no real predators. Our largest animals eat plants and sing to each other. The weather is always warm and nice. Rain falls at the same time every day. We have never known fear of being hunted. Other students nodded and made happy sounds. A silicate named Quartz spoke next. Crystal Falls is the same. Our world has gentle creatures that eat light and minerals. Violence is not known to us. Our greatest danger is strong wind that might crack our outer shell. Jake listened to story after story. Every alien student came from a world that sounded like paradise. No dangerous animals, no bad weather, no real threats at all. When Professor Cathera's big eyes turned to look at him, Jake felt his stomach drop. Jake Martinez, she said, please tell us about Earth's ecosystem. The whole classroom went quiet. Jake could feel 40 different types of alien eyes staring at him. He knew what they were thinking. Humans came from a death world. Everyone in the galaxy knew that. Earth was famous for being one of the most dangerous planets that had ever produced intelligent life. Well, Jake said slowly, Earth is different. We have lots of predators. Big cats, bears, sharks, snakes. The weather can be really bad too. Storms, floods, fires. Most things on Earth are trying to either eat you or kill you in some other way. A Zephyrian student made a scared chirping sound. The silicates dimmed their inner light. Jake noticed that several students moved their chairs even farther away from him. Fascinating, Professor Cathera said, but she didn't sound happy about. You and humans evolved in this environment? Yes, ma'am. We had to get good at fighting and running and hiding, and thinking fast when bad things happened. The professor's mandibles clicked together. I see. This explains much about human behavior patterns that we have observed. Jake wanted to ask what she meant by that, but he could see the fear in the other students' faces. He decided to stay quiet. After class, Jake walked slowly to the dining hall. He could hear the other students talking behind him, but they always stopped when he got close enough to hear the words. Lisa Wong was already sitting at their usual table. She was the only other human at the academy. Lisa was smart and good at languages. She had been here for a whole year already and knew how things worked. Rough day? Lisa asked when Jake sat down with his food. Same as always. They look at me like I might eat them. Lisa laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I know. I went through the same thing when I first got here. They think we're all killers because we come from Earth, but we're not killers. No, but we could be. That's what scares them. Look around, Jake. Most of these species never had to fight for anything. Their worlds gave them everything they needed. They don't understand what it means to struggle just to stay alive. Jake looked around the dining hall. The alien students sat in groups by species. They shared food and made happy sounds and talked about their homework. None of them carried weapons. None of them looked over their shoulders. None of them seemed to worry about anything at all. It must be nice, Jake said. What must be nice? Never being afraid. Never having to worry that something might hurt you. Lisa nodded. Yeah, It must be. But it also makes them weak. They don't know how to handle real danger because they've never faced any. Is that why the Academy only has 2 human students? Partly. Most species think we're too dangerous to be teachers or diplomats. They're afraid we'll solve every problem with violence. Jake pushed his food around on his plate. He had joined the Colonial Defense Force right out of high school and served for 3 years on the frontier worlds. He had seen real combat and done things he didn't like to think about. But he had also saved lives and protected innocent people. When he got out of the military, he wanted to do something different. He wanted to help build peace between humans and the other species in the galaxy. Do you think they'll ever trust us? Jake asked. Maybe. But first they have to understand us, and that might take a while. The next day in class, Professor Kethara gave them a new assignment. Each student had to research the top predator from their homeworld and give a presentation about how it hunted. Jake's heart sank. He knew exactly what animal he would have to talk about. And he knew that when the other students learned about it, they would be even more afraid of humans than they already were. Because the top predator on Earth wasn't a lion or a bear or a shark. It was human beings. And Jake was going to have to explain to a room full of aliens exactly why that was true. 3 days later, Jake sat in the big lecture hall listening to Professor Kethara talk about galactic ethics. The room was packed with over 100 students from dozens of different species. Jake had picked a seat near the back, as usual. He had his notebook out and was trying to pay attention, but the lesson was boring. The professor was explaining the rules that different species followed when they met each other for the first time. Most of it was common sense stuff. Don't attack. Don't steal. Try to communicate. Be respectful of cultural differences. Jake had learned most of this in his military training, but he took notes anyway. Then the alarms started. The sound was loud and sharp and made Jake's ears hurt. Red lights began flashing all over the lecture hall. An automated voice spoke in several different languages. Security breach. Security breach. All students and faculty remain in place. Security breach. Professor Kethara stopped talking and looked confused. Her big mantis eyes darted around the room. Students, please remain calm. This is probably just a drill. But Jake knew it wasn't a drill. The sound of the alarms was wrong. Real emergency alarms had a different pattern than drill alarms. He had heard enough of both during his time in the military to know the difference. The alien students started making nervous sounds. The Zephyrians began their fear song, a high-pitched humming that made Jake's teeth ache. The silicates dimmed their inner light until they were almost invisible. Even the plant-like Verdani students curled up their leaves and made themselves smaller. Jake stood up and walked to one of the big windows that looked out over the academy grounds. What he saw made his blood run cold. Security guards were running across the courtyard. But they weren't running toward some problem. They were running away from something. And as Jake watched, he saw what they were running from. It was big. Maybe 8 feet tall and covered in dark gray skin that looked like armor. It moved on 2 legs but leaned forward like an animal ready to pounce. Its arms were long and ended in claws that gleamed like metal. Its head was shaped like a shark's, with rows of sharp teeth and small black eyes. Jake had seen pictures of this species in his military briefings. It was a Corthex. They were one of the most dangerous predator species in the galaxy. They didn't just kill for food or territory. They killed because they enjoyed it. Oh no, Jake whispered. The Corthex moved fast across the courtyard. When a security guard tried to stop it, the creature slashed with its claws. The guard went down and didn't get back up. The Corthex didn't even slow down. Professor, Jake called out. We need to lock the doors now. Professor Kethara looked at him with confusion. What are you talking about, Jake Martinez? There's a Corthex raider on campus. It just killed a security guard. The words hit the classroom like a bomb. Students started screaming and crying. Some fainted, others tried to run for the exits, but Jake was already moving. Stop, he shouted, and something in his voice made everyone freeze. The doors lock automatically during a security breach. If you try to leave now, you'll be trapped in the hallways with that thing. Professor Cathara's mandibles clicked rapidly. A Corthex here? That's impossible. The Academy has the best security in this sector. Well, it's here now, Jake said. He was looking out the window again. The Corthex had reached the main building. It's coming inside. The automated voice spoke again. Security doors engaging. All personnel remain in secure locations until further notice. Heavy metal doors slammed shut over all the exits. The windows were made of reinforced glass that could stop energy weapons. The lecture hall was now a fortress. But Jake knew it wouldn't stop a Corthex for long. Those creatures were strong enough to tear through metal with their bare claws. The alien students huddled together in groups. Most of them had never seen real violence in their entire lives. Their homeworlds were safe and peaceful. They had no idea what to do when faced with a real predator. Jake moved to the front of the room. Everyone needs to stay calm. Help is coming, but it might take a while. We need to prepare for the possibility that this thing will get in here. Prepare.
How?
Asked a Zephyrian student named Lyra. Her voice was shaking with fear. Jake looked around the lecture hall. It wasn't a good place for a fight. Too open. Too many people. Not enough cover. But there were some heavy desks and chairs. Maybe he could work with that. We need to move toward the back of the room, Jake said. Away from the doors. If that thing gets in, we want as much distance as possible. Professor Cathara finally seemed to understand how serious this was. Students, please, follow Jake Martinez's instructions. Move carefully toward the rear of the lecture hall. The alien students started moving, but they were slow and clumsy with fear. Jake helped them along, but he kept looking at the doors. The Corthex was somewhere in the building now. It was just a matter of time before it found them. Lisa Wong appeared, at Jake's side. How bad is this? Pretty bad. Corthex are apex predators. They're fast, strong, and smart. And they don't stop until everything around them is dead. What's our plan? Jake looked at the 100 scared alien students behind them. Most of them couldn't fight a house cat, let alone a Corthex raider. If that thing got through the door, it would be a massacre. Keep everyone calm and hope the security forces can stop it before it gets here. But even as he said it, Jake knew that wasn't going to happen. He had seen how fast the Corthex moved. He had seen how easily it killed the security guard. The Academy's security forces were trained to handle student disputes and minor emergencies. They weren't soldiers. They weren't ready for this. A new sound reached them through the thick walls. It was a scraping noise like metal being torn apart. The sound was getting closer. It's in the corridor, Jake said quietly. The alien students heard the sound too. Some started crying. Others began praying to their various gods. The silicates flickered like dying lights. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had hoped his fighting days were behind him when he left the military. He had come to the Academy to learn about peace and diplomacy. He wanted to build bridges between species, not burn them down. But sometimes the galaxy didn't give you a choice. Sometimes the only way to protect innocent people was to become the very thing that others feared. The scraping sound was right outside their door now. The heavy metal door began to buckle inward. Each impact sent a booming sound through the lecture hall that made the alien students cry out in terror. The Corthex was strong enough to dent reinforced steel with its bare claws. Jake watched the door and counted the impacts. Boom, boom, boom. The metal was tough, but it wouldn't hold forever. Maybe 2 more minutes at most. Professor Cathara was trying to use her communicator to call for help, but the device just made static sounds. The emergency systems are jamming all communications, she said with panic in her voice. Behind them, the alien students were falling apart. A group of Zephyrians had formed a circle and were singing their death song. The silicates had gone completely dark and were trembling like leaves. Some of the smaller species had passed out from pure fear. Jake started taking off his jacket. Lisa looked at him with confusion. What are you doing? Getting ready. Jake pulled his shirt over his head and began tearing it into strips. Ready for what? Jake tied one strip of cloth around his left wrist and another around his right ankle. He made a crude sling from the rest and tested it with a piece of broken plastic from someone's notebook. Jake, you can't be serious. That's a Cortex out there. They're built to kill. So am I. The words came out flat and cold. Jake's whole demeanor had changed. The quiet student who struggled with xenobiology homework was gone. In his place stood something that made even Lisa take a step back. "Everyone get to the very back of the room," Jake said in a voice that cut through the noise and panic. "Get behind the heaviest desks you can find. Stay low. Stay quiet. Don't move unless I tell you to." Professor Cathara started to protest. "Jake Martinez, you cannot possibly think that you can fight a Cortex. They are among the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." Jake looked at her with eyes that were completely calm. "Professor, have you ever read my military file?" "Well, no, but I spent 3 years fighting pirates and raiders on the frontier worlds. I've killed things that would give that Cortex nightmares. The only difference is that I usually had better weapons." The door buckled again. This time Jake could see claws poking through the metal. "Move. Now." The authority in his voice was absolute. Even Professor Cathara obeyed without question. The alien students scrambled toward the back of the room like frightened children. Jake walked to the front of the lecture hall and began moving furniture. He pushed heavy desks into specific positions and turned over chairs to create obstacles. To the watching aliens, it looked random, but Jake was creating a killing field. The Cortex would expect to charge straight into a room full of helpless prey. Instead, it would find terrain that favored a smaller, more agile opponent. Every piece of furniture was positioned to force the creature to slow down, to limit its movement, to expose it to attack from unexpected angles. Lisa helped him move a particularly heavy desk. "Jake, even if you win, you know what this means, right? Every alien in this room is going to see a human kill a Cortex with his bare hands. They're going to be more afraid of us than ever." Jake paused for a moment. He looked back at the terrified students huddled behind their makeshift barricades. They were looking at him with a mixture of hope and horror. They wanted him to save them, but they were terrified of what he might become in the process. "Maybe," Jake said, "but they'll be alive to be afraid." The door finally gave way with a shriek of tortured metal. The Cortex stepped through the opening and into the lecture hall. It was even more terrifying up close. Its dark gray skin was covered in scars from countless battles. Its claws were as long as Jake's fingers and looked sharp enough to cut through bone. Its shark-like head turned back and forth as it scanned the room, and when its black eyes found the huddled students, it made a sound that was part growl and part laugh. The creature's name was Scareth the Blade. Jake had heard stories about him during his military service. He was a legendary killer who hunted for sport across the galaxy. Scareth had destroyed entire colonies just for the fun of watching people die. The Cortex took a step into the room and immediately stumbled over the first obstacle Jake had prepared. It caught itself easily, but for just a moment it was off balance. In that moment, Jake moved. He came from the side, using an overturned desk as cover. In his hand was a metal rod he had torn from a broken chair. Jake swung it at the creature's knee with all his strength. The rod bent on impact, but it did its job. Scareth roared in pain and anger and spun toward Jake with claws extended. But Jake was already gone. He had rolled behind another desk and was moving toward his next position. The Cortex slashed at empty air and growled in frustration. The alien students watched in stunned silence. They had expected Jake to charge the creature head-on like some kind of berserker. Instead, he was fighting like a ghost, hit and run, strike and fade, never stay in one place long enough to be caught. Scareth was bigger and stronger than Jake, but the human had advantages that the Cortex didn't understand. Jake's endurance was legendary among Earth species. He could keep moving long after other creatures collapsed from exhaustion. His reflexes had been honed by millions of years of evolution on a world where everything was trying to kill his ancestors. Most importantly, Jake could think while he fought. Scareth was a predator who relied on fear and overwhelming force. When his prey fought back intelligently, he didn't know how to adapt. The battle was just beginning, but the alien students could already see something that chilled them to their bones. The Cortex was fast and strong and deadly, but Jake Martinez was something else entirely. He was patient, he was calculating, and he was smiling. It was not a nice smile. Scareth the Blade had killed thousands of beings across the galaxy. He had fought warriors from every major species and never lost a battle. But this small human was doing something that had never happened before. He was making Scareth work for his victory. The Cortex lunged forward with his claws extended, expecting to pin Jake against a wall and tear him apart. Instead, Jake dropped to the floor and swept Scareth's legs with a broken chair leg. The 8-foot-tall predator crashed to the ground with a roar of surprise. Jake rolled away and came up with a shard of broken glass in his hand. Before Scareth could get to his feet, Jake sliced across the creature's shoulder, opening a long cut in the armored skin. The alien students gasped. They had never seen anyone actually hurt a Cortex before. In every story and legend, the shark-like predators were unstoppable forces of nature. But Jake had drawn blood in the first minute of the fight. Scareth touched the wound and looked at the dark fluid on his claws. For the first time in decades, he was bleeding from something other than an energy weapon. This human had hurt him with a piece of glass and his bare hands. The Cortex began to circle more carefully. His black eyes studied Jake with new respect and growing anger. This was supposed to be easy. The academy was full of soft prey species that had never known real violence. Instead, he had found something that fought back. Jake moved between the overturned desks like water flowing around rocks. Every time Scareth thought he had him trapped, the human would find a new path of escape. Jake's movements were smooth and controlled, showing no signs of panic or exhaustion. The two fighters danced around each other for several minutes. Scareth would attack with overwhelming force, and Jake would redirect that force against the Cortex himself. When the predator slashed with his claws, Jake would guide the strike into a desk or wall. When Scareth tried to grab him, Jake would slip away and strike at exposed joints and pressure points. From their hiding places, the alien students watched something they would never forget. They were seeing a human hunt. Jake wasn't just fighting Scareth. He was studying him, learning his patterns, understanding his weaknesses. Each exchange taught Jake something new about how the Cortex moved and thought. Scareth began to realize that he was in trouble. His breathing was getting heavy from the constant movement and failed attacks. The human showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, Jake seemed to be getting faster and more precise as the fight continued. The Cortex decided to end this quickly. He feinted left, then spun right and caught Jake with a backhanded blow that sent the human flying across the room. Jake hit a wall hard and slumped to the floor. Scareth roared in triumph and charged forward for the killing blow. But when he reached the spot where Jake had fallen, the human was gone. Jake had used his impact with the wall to push himself into a roll that carried him behind Scareth. As the confused Cortex spun around, Jake drove a broken metal rod into the back of the creature's knee. This time, Scareth's roar was pure pain. The rod had found the gap in his armor plating and gone deep into the joint. Dark blood flowed down his leg, and when he tried to put weight on it, the knee buckled. For the first time in his long career of violence, Scareth the Blade felt something he had forgotten existed. Fear. Jake pulled the rod free and stepped back. His own body was covered in cuts and bruises, but he was still moving with deadly grace. His breathing was controlled and steady. His eyes were focused and calm. The alien students could see the change in both fighters. The Cortex was hurt and tired and confused. The human looked like he could keep fighting for hours. Professor Cathara whispered to Lisa Wong, "How is this possible? Cortex are the perfect predators. They should not be able to lose to a single human." Lisa watched Jake circle around Scareth like a wolf around a wounded bear. "You're thinking about this wrong, Professor. Cortex are ambush predators. They're built for short, overwhelming attacks. They're not built for long fights. And humans are persistence hunters. We evolved to chase our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can keep going when everything else gives up." Scareth tried another desperate attack, but his injured leg slowed him down. Jake easily avoided the claws and struck again, this time driving his fist into a nerve cluster near the Cortex's spine. Scareth's left arm went numb and hung useless at his side. The predator stumbled backward, trying to put distance between himself and this impossible human. But there was nowhere to go. Jake had herded him into a corner without Scareth even realizing it. You fight well for prey, Scareth growled in broken galactic standard. Jake's smile got wider and more frightening. I'm not prey. He attacked then, moving faster than the watching aliens thought possible. Jake hit Scareth with a combination of strikes that targeted every weak point in the Corthex's armor. Nerve clusters, joint connections, pressure points that could cause paralysis or unconsciousness. Scareth tried to fight back, but his body was shutting down. The human's attacks were too precise and too fast. Each strike did exactly what Jake intended it to do. Finally, Scareth collapsed to his knees. His breathing was labored, and his vision was blurry. The human stood over him, ready to deliver the killing blow, but instead of finishing the fight, Jake stepped back. He picked up a length of torn clothing and began binding Scareth's wrists behind his back. Why? Scareth gasped. Why do you not kill me? Jake looked at the defeated Corthex with those calm, terrifying eyes. Because I'm not like you. I don't kill unless I have to. The alien students realized they were holding their breath. The fight was over, but none of them dared to move. They had just watched a human defeat one of the galaxy's most feared predators, without even trying to kill it. Jake Martinez sat down heavily and began checking his wounds. He was hurt, but nothing seemed serious. He would heal. He always did. That was what made humans so dangerous. They could take damage that would kill other species and keep fighting. They could face impossible odds and find a way to win. They could show mercy to enemies who had never shown mercy to anyone. The alien students began to understand why the rest of the galaxy feared Earth's children. It wasn't because humans were evil or violent. It was because they were so very, very good at staying alive. 20 minutes later, the Academy security forces finally broke through the damaged doors. They entered the lecture hall with energy weapons ready, expecting to find a massacre. Instead, they found something that would become legend throughout the galaxy. Scareth the Blade, the most feared Corthex raider in known space, was unconscious and tied up with strips of torn clothing. Jake Martinez sat nearby, calmly applying pressure to a deep cut on his forearm, while checking on the shocked students. Commander Vrex, the head of Academy security, stared at the scene in disbelief. His species, the Altarians, were known for their tactical intelligence, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this. What happened here? He asked. Professor Cathara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she tried to explain. The human student, Jake Martinez, fought the Corthex raider and defeated him in single combat. Commander Vrex looked at Jake with new eyes. The young human was clearly injured but still alert and functional. His wounds would have left most species unconscious or dead, but Jake was helping other students and giving reports to the medics. Is this true, Martinez? Jake shrugged, which made several alien students flinch. Even his casual movements reminded them of what they had just witnessed. Scareth was threatening my classmates. I stopped him. You defeated a Corthex raider with improvised weapons and no backup. Yes, sir. Commander Vrex had fought in 3 interstellar wars. He had seen the aftermath of Corthex raids. Entire planets had been devastated by creatures like Scareth, the Uppe. Fact that one human student had stopped such a predator seemed impossible, but the evidence was right in front of him. Scareth was alive but completely subdued. The other students were unharmed, and Jake Martinez was treating the whole thing like it was just another day at school. The medics were amazed by Jake's condition. His body's response to trauma was unlike anything they had seen from other species. Despite multiple injuries, his vital signs were stable and his healing rate was accelerated. He remained conscious and alert throughout the entire medical examination. Human physiology is remarkable, Dr. Yenth told Commander Vrex. He should be in shock from blood loss and tissue damage. Instead, his body has already begun advanced healing protocols. His pain tolerance is off our measurement scales. In the days that followed, everything changed at Zenith Galactic Academy. The story of the fight spread quickly through the student body. At first, many aliens didn't believe it. A single human defeating Scareth the Blade seemed like impossible fiction. But there were over 100 witnesses, and the security recordings confirmed every detail. Jake became the most famous student in the Academy's history, but he handled the attention the same way he had handled everything else. Quietly and with dignity. When reporters asked him about the fight, he simply said he had done what anyone would do to protect their classmates. This casual heroism was perhaps the most unsettling thing of all to the alien students. Jake genuinely seemed to think that fighting a legendary predator with improvised weapons was normal behavior. To him, it was just problem solving. The academic staff began incorporating the incident into their curriculum. Professor Kithara redesigned her entire course around the concept of evolutionary pressure and survival adaptation. The fight became a case study in how different environments created different capabilities. Students must understand, she explained to her class, that humans evolved in an environment of constant threat. Their homeworld of Earth demanded excellence in combat, endurance, and tactical thinking. Those who could not meet these demands did not survive to pass on their genes. The alien students finally began to grasp why humans seemed so dangerous. It wasn't that they loved violence or sought out conflict. It was that they came from a world where being dangerous was the only way to stay alive. Veltar, the Zephyrian student who had talked about his peaceful homeworld, approached Jake after one of Professor Kithara's lectures. "Jake Martinez," he said in his singing voice, "I owe you an apology. We judged your species harshly because we did not understand your nature." "You don't need to apologize," Jake replied. "I know humans seem scary to other species. We're built different because we had to be. But that is what I am beginning to understand. You are not dangerous because you are evil. You are dangerous because you are protective." Other students began to see Jake in a new light. They noticed how he always checked to make sure everyone understood the assignments, how he helped struggling students with their homework, how he went out of his way to learn about their cultures and customs. The human capacity for violence existed alongside an equally strong capacity for compassion. This combination was what made humans truly unique in the galaxy. Lisa Wong watched the change in how the other students treated Jake. "You know this means more humans will be accepted into galactic institutions, right? You've proven that we can be trusted with responsibility." Jake nodded, but he looked thoughtful. "I just hope they understand the lesson correctly. We're not weapons to be pointed at problems. We're people who happen to be good at protecting other people." The Academy administration decided to add human studies to their required curriculum. All students would learn about Earth's environment and how it shaped human psychology and capabilities. The goal was to build understanding and cooperation between species. Commander Vrex recommended Jake for admission to the Galactic Peacekeeping Academy. "The galaxy needs more beings who can think strategically under pressure," he wrote in his report. "Jake Martinez has demonstrated that humans possess unique abilities that could serve the cause of interstellar peace." 6 months later, Jake was invited to speak at the annual Galactic Education Conference. Representatives from hundreds of species attended to hear about the incident and its implications for interspecies relations. Jake's speech was simple and direct. Every species in this galaxy has evolved to survive in their environment. Some became good at cooperation. Some became good at adaptation. Some became good at problem solving. Humans became good at not dying. This makes us useful partners, not dangerous enemies. The audience listened in respectful silence. Many had come expecting to hear from a warrior or a killer. Instead, they found a young man who wanted nothing more than to help build a better galaxy for everyone. After his speech, Jake returned to his studies at Zenith Academy. He still sat in the back of the classroom, and some students still gave him nervous glances. But now there was respect mixed with the fear. They understood that the human capacity for violence was balanced by an even greater capacity for protection and sacrifice. Professor Kithara concluded her semester with a final thought. "We have learned that predators and prey are not fixed categories. Context determines behavior. In the right circumstances, any species can become protector or threat. The key is understanding when and why these transformations occur." Jake graduated with honors and went on to become one of the most successful peacekeepers in galactic history. But he never forgot the lesson he learned that day in the lecture hall. Sometimes the best way to build peace was to be prepared for War. Sometimes the greatest kindness was having the strength to be terrible when terrible things threatened the innocent. And sometimes, a killer walked into class only to discover that the real predator was already there, quietly taking notes and hoping for a better world.